Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs.
Bows and TKOs. We are live, episode 83, coming at you on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. We're back, and we're back for 9 weeks of consecutive UFC action. I'm your host, Shane Gillette, for this weekly MMA podcast, streaming anywhere you get your podcasts and videos on YouTube. And we have one hell of a show today, a little bit of a smaller show because we're just previewing this weekend's fight night card in Saudi Arabia because there was no UFC action this past weekend, but we did have some PFL and BKFC action we'll talk about, as well as a good amount of fights that have been announced. Got a little sweater on. It's chilly here in the desert, like in the 50 degrees the past few days, which I don't mind whatsoever. Still have not turned the heat on in my house, but it's supposed to jump up to high 70s and 80s into next week. So a little bit of a bipolar weather here. I would love for the cooler weather to stay and have some snow up in the mountain at Flagstaff so I can go snowboarding, as it's almost February and I have not gone up there. They've hardly had any snow besides man-made snow. So I'm eager. We got the NFL Super Bowl coming up. I have a preseason bet, $25 for the Eagles to beat the Chiefs before the season had started. So if the Eagles do win, your boy's going to cash out $2,500. I had a conference off-site visit in Las Vegas this past week. Won some money on the tables. Got a nice little parlay that has a couple legs left for the fights this weekend. So your boy is feeling good. Just got a Blackstone grill. So now I got a Traeger as an original grill smoker, and I have a Blackstone. So your boy's feeling good. Have some family and friends visiting. Getting into baseball, the thick of basketball and college basketball. So yeah, can't complain. But before we jump into the fights that we have announced, let's just do another one Q1 recap here, or preview. We obviously have a solid fight night card early morning Saturday because it's in Saudi Arabia and Riyadh. Then we have a pretty lackluster UFC 312 pay-per-view card. Really the main event, DDP and Sean Strickland rematch, and the co-main, Zhang Weili finally defending her strap against Tatiana Suarez. And then, to be honest, the rest of the card's pretty lackluster. I actually like this weekend's fight night card for depth and matchups better. Then we have an Apex show back to Seattle, the 206 at Climate Pledge. Nice little fight night card full of bantamweights. Back to the Apex for Brandon Royval, Manel Kopp, which I'm actually excited for that fight. The Apex headliner, Jared Cannonier, Gregory RoboCop Rodriguez is going to be insane. Another Apex after a solid 313 in Vegas that's not fully built out, but the two fights are price of admission. Alex Pereira, Magomed Ankalaev, Dan Hooker, Justin Gaethje, straight carnage. Back to the Apex for Marvin Vettori, Roman Dolidze 2, which I'm kind of shocked that they matched that up. Then we go to London in March for Leon Edwards, Jack Della Maddalena. And then 2 fight nights to be determined, March 29th and April. Let's see if Sherdog has the fights on there. The UFC website is always a nightmare, as they never show hardly anything. I just feel like they don't update it or keep it up to speed very often. Let's see if they have locations. So April 5th, the Apex, and then UFC 314 in Miami, April 12th. So a ton of Apex. At least they're going to Seattle, Saudi Arabia, London. But I wish they would get some more location-based. That was kind of the theme that Dana had talked about. Have yet to see that come to fruition. But 9 consecutive weeks of action, so let's jump right in. We have Colby Thickness. What a last name, Thickness. Making his UFC debut in for Cody Haddon against Alexandre Topuria, the featherweight champion's brother, Ilya Topuria's brother, on February 8th. We have another sub in. We have Gabriel Bonfim now taking on Chaos Williams as Renat Fakhretdinov's out for that February 15th bout. Glad these are still fights that are being made. Gabriel and Chaos will be fun. People are speaking pretty highly of Colby Thickness, and Alexandre Topuria is pretty much the coach of Ilya, so let's see if his IQ translates to the octagon. Also added on that Seattle card, there should be one more fight, as we still have Michael Chiesa looking for an opponent, but they have added this very good bout, Andre Fili and Melquizil Costa. I'm sure Fili wanted to be in that card because he's from Federal Way, Washington, which is a suburb south of Seattle, technically in Seattle. I thought he would get a better opponent, but that's still a great fight. On March 1st, we have Douglas Silva de Andrade taking on John Castaneda. And then, as your boy had predicted, there was a couple changes, which I'm stoked for. They had booked Asu Almabayev against Steve Ursig. And at the end of the year, when I said this is what I think they should do in the top 10, they must have heard your boy, because they have made a change. Asu will now take on Alan Nascimento. And then Brandon Moreno is taking place against Steve Ursig March 29th in Mexico. So I'm excited that that's the matchup, because Brandon Moreno, Steve Ursig is a lot better of a matchup if you ask me. Also on March 1st, we have Ricardo Ramos and Chepe Mariscal. That's absolutely bonkers. UFC 313, Bobby Green is taking another up-and-comer. He's taking on Mauricio Ruffy. So it'll be awesome to see how Ruffy can stand the comp. March 15th, we have that Vittori Dolidze 2 matchup. I wish Marvin would have got somebody else, but it is what it is. And then we have Lupi Godinez stepping in for Yasmin Uruguay, taking on Julia Polastri March 29th in Mexico as well. On April 5th, we have Luis Guerrilli and Ode Osborne, Diane Barbosa versus Diana Balbita, and Vanessa Demopoulos versus Talida Alencar. And then for Miami, we have Nikita Krylov, Dominic Reyes, and Jim Miller versus Chase Hooper. Both great fights. And sadly, the Andre Muniz Ikram Aliskerov fight is off. Hopefully that could get rebooked. I like that matchup. And then with a lot of the UFC roster conundrums, we have Ihor Potieria and Jose Johnson removed from the UFC. And there's been lots of roster issues because the GFL draft happened live on YouTube. Their opening monologue, all CGI, was very interesting. The fighters wearing like Roman-style outfits looking to go to battle. But the little rap song was catchy, Protect Your Neck. It was pretty funny. I listened to that like 20 times on repeat. I was really excited for the GFL because of the roster, but the rosters seemed to be not fully accurate, as a lot of fighters that were announced that they had signed, like the very good Timur Kizriev that's in Bellator. He won the $1 million for the PFL, said that he had not signed. Jeremy Stevens went on the Ariel Helwani show saying, you know, after this BKFC event we'll talk about, he did not actually sign his contract, but he plans to fight there. Rashad Evans is supposed to box, and he said that he hasn't signed his contract. I know the GFL is allowing them to fight in other promotions, so we'll see how that's to be determined. But before their actual fights in April, a lot of flack on the GFL. They had leaked the teams before they were drafted, showing that it was pretty much a pre-cut team selection. Fighters were announcing guys that were picks that had already happened or way before. Definitely somewhat of a shit show. And the new promoter who was announcing the fights had no excitement or energy whatsoever. He could definitely improve there. But yeah, lots of question marks for rosters in the GFL, as a lot of fighters have supposedly signed there. But a lot of the guys that are the turning heads for the GFL are saying they've had checks and they've cleared, as the very first pick was Tyron Woodley, which wasn't a surprise, but they clearly weren't signing the best or drafting the best talent off the rip, as they were signing a lot of older fighters. It seems like they're just trying to get fighters that have following involved first. But Team Dubai, coached by Cain Velasquez and Javier Mendez, which the coaches are very high level as well. Dubai has guys like Luke Rockhold, Derek Brunson, Tyron Woodley, Abubakar Nurmagomedov, Tafik Musayev, Damir Ismugulov, Tamir Valiev. So some solid fighters on Team Dubai. Team London, Tanner Bozer, Alir Latifi, Alexander Gustafsson, Gegard Mousasi, Benson Henderson, Brett Johns, Penny Kianzad, Julia Budd. So some pretty solid talent on London. I like Dubai so far. Team LA, Wanderlei Silva is the coach, and Rafael Cordero. They have Andre Arlovsky, Frank Mir, Rashad Evans, Dawoon Jung, Uriah Hall, Grant Neal, Lorenz Larkin, Tony Ferguson, Sage Northcutt, Tyler Diamond, Chad Mendez, Uriah Faber, Ray Borg, Aspen Ladd, Cynthia Cavillo, Jessica Penne, and Corey McKenna. So Team LA is stacked. A lot of older fighters on the GFL roster in general. Team Miami, coached or manager Thiago Alves. They got JDS, Robelis de Spain, Thiago Santos, Felipe Lins, Yoel Romero, Hector Lombard, Jeremy Stevens, Anthony Pettis, Charles Rosa, Marlon Marias, Maria Agapova, Kat Zingano, Paige Van Zant, Hannah Goldie. So Team Miami is pretty stacked as well. Team New York, coached by Ray Longo, Kevin Lee, Chris Weidman, Holly Holm, Kai Kamaka. And I'm just going over the noteworthy names. Sydney Outlaw, Neiman Gracie, Dylan Dennis, Philip Haas, Devin Clark, OSP, Alan Belcher, and Alexi Olenek. Team New York looking pretty good as well. And then we have Team Sao Paulo, manager Leota Machida. They have Viviane Araujo, Julio Arce, Patricky Freire, Alex Oliveira, Douglas Lima, Mauricio Rua, Fabricio Verdum, and Bruno Capoloza. So I like Team Dubai, LA, and Miami so far. Trying to see if I can find the order here, because again, they were not drafting the best talent first. I'm trying to give an example. Pick one was Tyron Woodley, then Sage Northcutt. Sage Northcutt, good name, young fighter, but no offense, he is not the second best talented fighter. Then we had Gegard Mousasi as the third pick for Team London, which made sense. And then you knew things weren't adding up, as JDS was pick 4, Fabricio Verdum pick 5, Kevin Lee 6, Chris Weidman first of the second round, Douglas Lima, Anthony Pettis, Alexander Gustafsson. So you could see they had a lot of older fighters that just definitely weren't the best of talent. Like, I'd take a lot of guys ahead of them talent-wise. Damir Ismugulov, Tafik Musayev, I mean, just to name a few. So interesting to see how this GFL thing unfolds. I hope it works out, especially for some of the names. And some people weren't even drafted because they'll have backup rostered fighters in case they can't fight for their teams, as they're supposed to fight in like 60-day turnarounds. But anyways, we'll keep an eye on the GFL. Kind of a clunker of a debut. But this weekend we had the PFL. I would say a pretty boring start, a ton of wrestling throughout the event. So the main event was much needed, but holy shit, what a fight that was. But some fights that had happened. Ibragimov, a 9-0 fighter, had a unanimous decision over Kenny Mokoana. We had Ahmed Magomedov with a round 2 rear naked choke over Nathan Kelly, after Nathan Kelly landed a beautiful elbow and had him knocked down in round 1. This is the very much Dagestan versus Ireland debacle that we've been having here. We had Vadim Nemkov, who supposedly turned down Corey Anderson, made very slight work with a rear naked choke over Tim Johnson. Would love to see Vadim against some quality talent. I think he's one of the better talents in the PFL. But the main event, Usman Nurmagomedov with a majority decision over Paul Hughes. I actually scored Paul Hughes winning the fights. I think I had him rounds 2, 4, and 5, as Usman definitely tired throughout the fight, and Paul was definitely the fresher fighter that was bringing the fight towards the middle of the octagon. Usman back against the cage, circling majority of the fight. Usman is very talented. I'm a huge fan. The way he strikes, the combinations he puts together. But Paul Hughes won me over as a fan. Not being as invested in Bellator and PFL, everyone was talking about how big of a signing that was for the PFL, and I'm starting to understand. The kid is ready to fight. He's the real deal. Again, I thought he actually won the fight. Usman and team are saying they shouldn't get a rematch, but they're saying that Umar should get a rematch to Merab. And my whole standpoint is if he gets a rematch, Paul Hughes should get a rematch. Paul Hughes deserving it even more, if you ask me. But I had thought of Paul Hughes as this young up-and-coming prospect, but he's actually older than Usman and is dang near his prime. So I'm excited to see what's next for Paul Hughes. There's not quality opponents for him to fight in the PFL. This kid's an absolute stud. If you didn't catch the main event, tune in to Paul Hughes and obviously Usman. But the PFL just can't put quality opponents against these guys. Me personally, if the PFL wants to stay relevant, you have to run back the rematch. That was a UFC quality main event. What a bonker fight. The meme of Paul Hughes after accidental clash of heads, bloodied in the head, just staring down Usman, ready to go, as Usman was needing time because of the head clash, pretty much summed up the fight for me. Paul Hughes is that dude. But anyways, locations to be determined, but their playoffs with their new tournament starts April 3rd. 8-man tournaments per weight class. That should be fun. Hopefully they don't get a bunch of dropouts. Every time the PFL puts a tournament together, half the talent pulls out. So hopefully it works out for them. In BKFC, it's just bloody, vicious knockouts, not a very long fights. Big Ben Rothwell got a very quick knockout to be the heavyweight champion. Jeremy Stevens had a big win against Eddie Alvarez in the main event. Faced off with Conor McGregor, broke Eddie's jaw. That was a fun fight. But the BKFC is picking up steam, sold out Philly. Philly came and showed out for the BKFC. Hopefully they could continue to put on quality matchups. And I would think Jeremy Stevens and Platinum Mike Perry should be next. But enough of that nonsense. Let's talk UFC. We have UFC Saudi Arabia this Saturday. Prelims are on ESPN Plus starting at 6 a.m. Pacific. So get up, get your Irish coffees, get your, if you're a healthy person, athletic greens, whatever you got to do to wake up and watch the fights. I'm excited for that. The main card starts at 9 a.m., all on ESPN Plus. To preview the card, I would say the main card is really good. They have some big names. The prelims will have some fun, violent matchmaking. I do feel like the matchmaking is good. It should deliver for quality fights. But for an early morning fight card, I'm praising it. I'll take it. I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. Some good fights we will not break down. We have Jamal Pogues taking on Hamdi Abdul Wahab. Excuse me. And then they actually scrapped this week. Belowi Oki, the Contender Series stud, was supposed to take on Abdul Karim Al-Sawadi. Excuse me. But Oki had withdrawn from the fight. So, we're going to kick this off in the prelims. We have Jasmine Jazdavicius, with 35 years old, with a 12-3 record, and the number 12 next to her name, taking on Mayra Shitara Bueno Silva, 33 years old, with a 10-4-1 record. Now, Mayra had been fighting up in the bantamweight division. She has fought in the flyweight division in her career. And Jasmine technically has fought bantamweights, but it's because her opponents did not make weight. But this is an intriguing fight for Mayra. She has been exposed against some of the top-level competition in the bantamweight division, but she is still a very good and powerful striker, still in her prime at 33 years old. as she moves down to flyweight for the first time in years. And Jasmine is the best version of herself right now. She's full of confidence, and this is a chance for her to get the biggest win of her UFC career. Breaking it down, Jasmine trains out of Niagara top team, Niagara, excuse me. She has a brown belt in BJJ. She has the largest total strike differential in a UFC women's bout, 326 strikes to 26 against Priscilla Cajera. She's a Cage Fury and Contender Series alum. She's on a 3-fight winning streak and is 5-1 since 2023. Funny story about Priscilla. She doesn't speak very good English, but when I went and watched the Salt Lake pay-per-view a couple summers ago, we went to a bar afterwards. We were going to go to the main UFC bar where there's fan meetups, but it was just way too packed. So we went to one off the beaten path, and Priscilla was there drinking. What was she drinking? What is that beer? Heineken, I think. And a couple of the guys we're with went and said, "What's up?" She looked pretty beat up. You could just tell some of these fighters that are battling roster spots don't have a ton of money, just regular people. It's always kind of fun to see the fighters outside of that just being normal people. She was still wearing her fight kit all sweaty and bloodied up in that fight because she got dominated. But Myra, she trains out of American Top Team. She also has a brown belt in BJJ. She's a Contender Series alum. She's on a 2-fight losing streak. She's 1-2-1 since 2023, and 7 of her 10 wins are via submission. Now, breaking this down, Jasmine's definitely more of a grappler, while Myra's more of a striker, so a little clash of styles here. But I am interested to see how hard the weight cut is for Myra, as she has even struggled to make bantamweight of late, so it'll be interesting to see how she looks going down to flyweight again. And I do think because of this, the longer the fight goes and the more volume and grit that Jasmine provides, which is her specialty, it'll favor Jasdavicius. But I would say Myra is more powerful and more of a technical striker. I do think her speed's also going to pay dividends here. But Jasmine was able to take it to Ariane De Silva, who's a solid, powerful striker. So I do think this will be a hard-fought, tight battle. But I think Myra is the better fighter. I'm going to take Myra Bueno Silva, and she's an underdog. I like a bunch of underdogs this weekend. The underdogs are coming to eat. Ho, ho. And I am taking her on that parlay. We marking it down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. Be fun to see how my picks go this week. Excuse me. We got Terrence T-Rex McKinney, 30 years old with a 15-7 record, taking on Damir the Bosnian Bomber Hadzovic, 38 years old with a 14-7 record. Now, personally, where T-Rex's UFC career is, it's now put up or shut up time as he enters his prime at 30 years old. He's lived and died by his sword and definitely needs to be more measured with his attack. But Damir, he's 8 years older and is looking for positive momentum. He's only fought twice since 2020. Doesn't seem like injury was a reason, so I'm not too sure why. And he hasn't fought for almost 2 years, so there should be some ring rust here. But Terrence, he's got a purple belt in BJJ. He has a D2 wrestling background out of Chadron State College and North Idaho College. He's a Contender Series and LFA alum. He has the fastest finish and knockout in UFC lightweight division history, 7 seconds against Matt Frivola, which is a very quality win. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 2-3 since 2023. 7 of his 15 wins are via knockout, 8 via submission, so all 15 of his wins have come via finish, but 5 of his 7 losses are also via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out, and he does have a 3.5-inch reach advantage. Now, Damir has a purple belt in BJJ as well. He's a Cage Warriors alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak, is 1-1 since 2021, and 7 of his 14 wins are via knockout. Now, this fight could very well be chaos. Who knows what to expect from the older Damir after the time off? And Terrence is definitely going to bring the offense and pressure, which can make for a very fun fight. But Terrence could put himself in the fire and put himself in danger, but I do expect him to be the better fighter. For that reason, I'm taking Terrence McKinney. We putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on, still in the prelims, and this card bout might have changed the order with some of the fallouts, or still might change. But we have Shamil Gaziev, 34 years old with a 13-1 record, and the number 14 next to his name, taking on Thomas the Train Peterson, 29 years old with a 9-2 record. And honestly, I think this is going to be an ugly fight. Thomas is coming off his best win against Muhammad Usman, where he was actually able to be having success with the takedowns and do just enough with them to win the decision. But I'm not sure he's going to be able to do that against Shamil, who is a more savvy striker and probably a better grappler. But if Thomas could make this an ugly fight, have it drag on into rounds 2 and 3, he could have a chance of winning in the later rounds and try to gas Shamil out like Jairzinho Rosenstrike did, and much like the Jasmine fight, right? Thomas has to make it ugly, wear on him, clinch, find a way to just wear him out. But Shamil is a Brave and Contender Series alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak. He's 3-1 in the UFC. 8 of his 13 wins are via knockout, 3 via submission. So 11 of his 13 wins have come via finish. And he's rocking a 4.5-inch reach advantage and a 5-inch leg reach advantage. Now, Thomas is an LFA and Contender Series alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak, 2-1 in the UFC, and 7 of his 9 wins are via knockout. Now, I envision Shamil using his jab and his length to pick at Thomas, slow the fight down a little bit, defend the takedowns, and attack Thomas as he looks to close distance with nice counters, maybe some body shots. And if he finds himself in a position when they get in close, maybe find a way to clinch and get a takedown of his own. But if Shamil can avoid gassing out, he's going to be the better striker and fighter. For that reason, I'm taking Gaziev. I am putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. We have Fares the Smile Killer Ziam, 27 years old with a 6-4 record, taking on Mike Beast Boy Davis, 32 years old with an 11-2 record. Now, when I said in the prelims we have some fun, violent matchmaking, this is an epitome of that. This is a very fun, matched fight. And Fares is really coming into his own, although he's only 27, almost 28. And Mike is cruising through some of the light competition he's faced, but has had it tough getting to the UFC as he lost to Sadiq Youssef in his Contender Series fight. And when he finally made it to the UFC, he debuted against Gilbert Burns. So they must think highly of him, but he needs to hold his ground as he's in his prime, and the time is now for him at 32 years old. A loss here puts him in a bad spot in the division. Breaking it down, Fares trains out of Killcliff FC. He's on a 4-fight winning streak. Excuse me. And he's 4-1 since 2022. 6 of his 16 wins are via knockout, 4 via submission. So 10 of his 16 wins have come via finish, and 3 of his 4 losses are via submission. He also has a 2.5-inch reach advantage. Now, Mike has a boxing style. He's an Island Fights and Contender Series alum. He's on a 4-fight winning streak. He's 4-1 in the UFC, and 7 of his 11 wins are via knockout. Now, the striking exchanges here, they're going to be wild. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a finish in this fight. Fares is going to have the length and speed advantage, but I do expect Mike to have the power and technique advantage. But one thing with Ziam, you can't coach what he does. He's a lot like Yair Rodriguez with big, long, wild combinations that you can't see coming, and is a very non-technical striker from the outside. I do think his creativity is going to pay dividends here. For that reason, I'm taking another underdog. I'm taking Fares Ziam. The dogs are coming to eat. Hoo hoo. I will avoid this on a parlay, though. This is a pretty 50-50 coin toss fight. Moving on into the main card, We have Muhammad Hilman Naimov, 30 years old with an 11-3 record, taking on Khan Genghis Ofli, 31 years old with a 12-3-1 record. Now, this is another fun matchup between two men who are very well-rounded. They're good everywhere, good wrestlers. But Muhammad is coming off a surprise loss, and I think he's going to try to right the ship. He really wants to get back on the win column. He's had some quality UFC wins already, and Khan was really, honestly, uber impressive during his Ultimate Fighter stint, but he has shown that he has a ton of room to improve, especially when it comes to striking in the UFC. And that showed in the Ultimate Fighter Championship against Myron Santos. Now, breaking it down, Muhammad has a Taekwondo style. He trains at an Elevation Fight Team. He's a Titan FC Contender Series and Tough Enough alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak. He's 3-1 in the UFC. And he does have a 4-inch reach advantage and a 2.5-inch leg reach advantage. There is some length advantages on this card. Now, Khan is an Ultimate Fighter alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak, 3-1 since 2023, and 5 of his 11 wins are via submission. Now, both of these dudes, they have cardio for days. They like to offensively wrestle, but I'm expecting Naimov to have an advantage there. And both men on paper, their opponents, they like to pepper their opponents with strikes, but they don't have the real strength in that department. So I'm going to give Naimov an edge with his experience and the thought of him really wanting to bounce back from that loss. For that reason, I'm taking Muhammad Naimov. I am putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on, we have Vinicius Lockdog Oliveira, 29 years old with a 21-3 record, taking on Saeed Nurmagomedov, 32 years old with a 18-3 record. Again, great matchmaking here. This is an intriguing matchup as Saeed has been out for a year and a half, and he's pulled out of 3 bouts, which was just in 2024. So he pulled out of 3 bouts in 2024, and they were all week of the fight for unknown reasons. So there's definitely some questions there. Something just doesn't seem right to me, but we do know that Saeed's in his prime at 32 years old. He is skilled, but he's not the level of the other Nurmagomedovs and Usman, Umar, and Khabib. Definitely better than Abubakar. But Saeed has had quality wins and much more experience than Oliveira. Vinicius really proved what he could do since his Contender Series days. He had a fantastic win against Ricky Simone and really opened my eyes because I thought he was only a striker, but he handled the takedown defense of Ricky and even got a takedown of his own. But I do expect the striking in this fight to be very fun, wild, and aggressive, and I would not be surprised if there was a finish. Breaking it down, Vinicius is a Contender Series alum. He's on a 4-fight winning streak, 3-0 in the UFC. 16 of his 21 wins are via knockout, and all 3 of his losses are via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. Now, Saeed is an international master of sport in MMA. He's on a 1-fight winning streak. He's 1-1 since 2023. 6 of his 18 wins are via submission, 4 via knockout, so 10 of his 18 wins via finish. Now again, Vinicius really won me over in the Ricky Simone fight. His takedown defense was top-notch. He defended 9 takedowns, and again, he even got one of his own late in the fight. He basically wore out Simone, which is hard to do. And I think because of that, he's going to make this a kickboxing battle. And I do think he's going to have the speed and power advantage over Saeed. Saeed may have the technical advantage, but who knows if he's healthy or what's going on with him. And Lockdog, we know one thing. He's going to bring the fight to him. He's going to make him scrap, and I think he's going to make him crumble. So I'm taking another dog. The dog's coming to eat the Lockdog. I am putting Vinicius on a parlay as that dog. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. We got some very fun fights here to close out the main card. we have Sergey Pavlovich, 32 years old with an 18-3 record and the number 4 next to his name, taking on Jairzinho Biggie Boy Rosenstrike, 36 years old with a 15-5 record and the number 9 next to his name. Now, this fight's going to be about Biggie Boy getting past the first round and a half and weathering the storm. Not only can he weather the storm, but can he avoid being taken down and smothered if Sergey goes there? If he can accomplish that, I think he can tire Sergey out and find his openings, especially landing nice lead leg kicks because Sergey is so powerful with the wide stance. And as Sergey punches, if he could miss or slip, he will have room to counter. Now, Sergey, a couple of years ago, he seemed like an unstoppable force. But Alexander Volkov exposed him, so it's going to be interesting to see if Sergey still fights with reckless abandonment or if he's leveled up a little bit. Breaking it down, Sergey is an orthodox fighter. He trains out of Eagles MMA. 4 of his last 8 fights have been performance of the night. He's showing up. He's showing out. Those are all first-round knockouts. He's a Fight Nights Global alum and former champion. He has the longest first-round knockout win streak in UFC history at 6 of them things. Again, he was an absolute wrecking force. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. He's 1-2 since 2023. 15 of his 18 wins are via knockout. 2 of his 3 losses are also via knockout, as is life in the heavyweight division, to knock out or be knocked out. And he's long, man. He's got a 6-inch reach advantage and a 4-inch leg reach advantage. Now, Jairzinho has a kickboxing style. He trains out of American Top Team. He has the latest finish in UFC heavyweight history at 4 minutes and 56 seconds against Alistair Overeem. He's the only fighter to have 3 knockouts of 30 seconds or less in UFC history. And he was the 2019 Newcomer of the Year and had the 2019 Comeback of the Year against Alistair Overeem. But honestly, Sergey is just a force. I think the losses that he's had has humbled him, and Jairzinho has been susceptible to being knocked out by big power. So I'm going to go with Pavlovich, but wouldn't be surprised if he wears out middle of round 2 and Biggie Boy takes advantage and can win by decision. But I'm taking Sergey Pavlovich. We are putting him on that parlay, marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on to the co-main event, a stylistic matchup for the heavens. We have Michael Venom Page, 37 years old with a 22-3 record and the number 15 next to his name, taking on Shara Bullet Magomedov, 30 years old with an undefeated 15-0 record and the number 14 next to his name. Now this fight is going to have the crowd oohing and ahhing in Riyadh. Again, stylistically, this is a kickboxing dream that is sure to entertain. Shara is a forward striker who throws wild, crazy kicks and combos and is potentially coming off his craziest knockout yet with the double spinning back fist knockout. While MVP lives off that wide karate stance where he uses his speed and counters to bounce in, kind of lunge in, lunge out, keep himself out of danger. He covers a ton of space where his opponents can't land shots back. And I notoriously pick against Shara. I picked against him in his last fight, and I thought Petrosian was on path to win until he got double spinning fist. But breaking it down, Michael has a kickboxing style. He has a black belt in Kung Fu. He won silver in the 2010 World Combat Games. He's a Bellator alum. He has the most stoppage victories in Bellator welterweight history at 10. The most knockouts in Bellator at 9. He's tied with Patricky Pitbull for most knockout victories in Bellator history with 11. He had the 2016 Knockout of the Year for Bellator against Evangelista Santos. If you haven't seen that knockout, look it up. He's on a 1-fight losing streak. He's 2-1 since 2023. He's 1-1 in the UFC. 14 of his 23 wins are via knockout, and he's rocking a 6-inch reach advantage. Now, Shara has 3 of his 4 UFC fights as performance of the night or fight of the night. He's showing up. He's showing out. He's a rocket ship right now in popularity because he's the pirate with one eye. And 12 of his 15 wins are via knockout. Now, personally, again, I have been picking against Shara. He's just not technically sound. And I do believe MVP is going to use his speed and length to win a decision here. But Shara has some wild attacks of his own. And if he could find the mark, it could be night-night. But I think MVP fights defensively sound to stay out of harm's way. And Shara doesn't have very good striking defense and is a little bit reckless. And I think that's going to catch up to him. So I'm taking another underdog. The dogs are coming to eat this weekend. I'm taking MVP. I am putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down. And we getting that bread. Moving on to the main event. We have Israel, the last style bender, Adesanya, 35 years old with a 24-4 record and the number 3 next to his name, taking on Nasruddin, the sniper Imavov, 28 years old with a 15-4-1 record and the number 5 next to his name. Now, it's wild to think we're getting a non-pay-per-view main event from Adesanya, a non-title bout. But he is still in his prime at 35, and he does have a lot left in the gas tank. Now, this is a big step up for Nasruddin, but he's passed all of his recent tests with flying colors. But I don't think he's going to be able to outstrike Izzy at this point in his career, as he's not even in his own prime at 28 years old. But maybe he looks to grapple Izzy. I don't think he'll have any success there either, though. Breaking it down, Israel is a kickboxing style. He trains at a City Kickboxing. He has a purple belt in BJJ. He was a Super 8 boxing tournament champion, a King of the Ring champion, and 2016 Glory middleweight winner. He's a former middleweight UFC champion with not 1, not 3, but 5 successful title defenses. He was the first 2-time UFC middleweight champion. He was an interim champion. He had the 2017 Fight of the Year against Alex Pereira in Glory. He has the most knockdowns in a UFC title fight with 4 against Kelvin Gastelum, which was the interim title. He's tied with Anderson Silva for most knockdowns in the UFC middleweight division history at 13. He has the longest average fight time in UFC middleweight history at 17 minutes and 53 seconds. He's fought so many main events, he averages more than a 3-round fight. He was the 2018 Newcomer of the Year, had the 2019 Fight of the Year against Kelvin Gastelum. I was watching YouTube TV the other day, and they had the UFC Unleashed and led up and replayed that fight, so I got to rewatch that because that was so much fun. He's the 2019 Male Fighter of the Year, and he had the 2023 Knockout of the Year versus Alex Pereira, and one of the most stone-cold knockout celebrations of all time, hitting him with 3 arrows in the heart. That shit was savage. 16 of his 24 wins are via knockout, but he is on a 2-fight losing streak. He's only 1-2 since 2023, and he does have a 5-inch reach advantage and a 2.5-inch leg reach advantage. This card's all about long length advantages and knockout power. Nasruddin has an orthodox style. He trains out of the MMA Factory. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. He's 3-1-1 since 2023. 6 of his 15 wins are via knockout, 4 via submission, so 10 of his 15 wins via finish. Now, Nasruddin has really impressed me. He is starting to hit his stride, but there are definitely levels to the game, and Israel is still at the top of the hill. But he has just fought a gauntlet of unreal talent, including Alex Pereira and Dricus du Plessis. I just don't think Nasruddin is better than guys like Robert Whittaker or the current champion. And Izzy is going to point fight his way to victory here. Nasruddin hasn't been knocked out, so I do think a decision is in store. But it'll be interesting to see if Imavov tries to offensively wrestle. But again, I just don't think he'll have success there. And also, Izzy I don't think is being lazy. I don't think he's unmotivated. I do think this fight is to showcase he's still the man and he still deserves prize fights. For that reason, I'm taking Israel Adesanya. I am putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down and we getting that bread. But again, I think this is better than the upcoming pay-per-view. Some very fun stylistic matchups. I'm excited for an early morning card as I'm heading to Supercross this Saturday. My guy Ken Roxon with the red plate, which means he's the point leader. He won Glendale last year. It's the first Triple Crown of the season, so I'm really excited about that. But next weekend, we're back to pay-per-view in Sydney, Australia. UFC 312, headlined by DDP and Sean Strickland 2, and Zhang Weilei and Tatiana Suarez in a very top-heavy pay-per-view. That's episode 83. I'm your host, Shane Gillette. See you next week.